Hello, everybody. Thank you for listening. Recording here on a Monday afternoon. A couple of subjects that I really want to touch on quickly. The AFC Championship game, the NFC Championship game, and then I want to get into quickly the Packers hiring a new defensive coordinator, Jonathan Gannon, if you haven't been on top of that news yet. But that's what's going on with the Packers right now. And then I want to get into Giannis and the Bucks quickly, and then maybe we can finish off with just a quick touch on the Brewers giving up fastball Freddy. We'll get more into that in a minute, but let's just start with these NFC, AFC Championship games. I don't know if anybody watched them. I hope you did. The first one was the Patriots and the Broncos, and it was actually a really fun game. At least I thought it was, especially towards the second half. The weather really started to intensify. There was more wind, more snow picking up, and I actually put down a friendly wager on the longest field goal being over 50.5 yards. And right before half, Lutz stepped out. I think it was for a 53, 54-yarder. I thought it was going to cash right there, but he missed it wide right. And then, of course, before half, even the Patriots come right around, and then they have an opportunity. It was a bit longer. I think it was a 60-plus yarder, 62-yarder or something. But that's when the conditions were really starting to pick up, and didn't even have a good feeling about that, but had another crack at it and did not happen. But anyway, Drake May finished 10 for 21 for 86 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, was sacked 5 times for a rating of 58.8. I thought the Patriots looked for the second time in a row now pretty beatable for as good as they are. They looked like they're going to get beat by the Seahawks. I'm struggling. I don't know what to say, but they're, you see them, and I was, watching the game, and even when the conditions were picking up and it was getting snowy and it was a, slow snow globe game and fun to watch, it just seemed that both of those teams were beatable, and weren't as tough as the Seahawks, let alone the Rams. And it was another performance by the Patriots, which wasn't necessarily convincing, but I just feel ridiculous saying this because, they're in the Super Bowl now, and they will be playing the Seahawks, which we'll get into in a minute. I thought Stidham played really well, much better than I think a lot of people were anticipating. He finished 17 of 31, 133 yards, 1 TD, 1 interception, and was sacked 3 times for a rating of 63. I thought the Broncos defense in Denver, it was fun to even hear and watch that crowd. That crowd was going absolutely crazy. Anytime the Denver defense stepped out on the field, it was palpable, the energy, even through TV. Watching the broadcast. Let me shut my blind real quick. But anytime their defense stepped onto the field, yes, you could hear it. The crowd was going crazy, and they played a lot better than, there were some people saying that their defense was kind of falling off of a cliff a little bit, that they weren't as good as what they had been throughout the whole year. Allowing 20-plus points in multiple games through the final stretches here, but they looked hungry. They looked fast. They were going after May, but he broke off a couple of rushes, and broke off that rush at the end that was really the dagger that won them the game. But I thought the Broncos defense looked very good, and Stidham he played well enough that you could have won with him as well. And that he had the biggest difference in the game was that turnover that he had. For a lot of these young quarterbacks, and especially, coming in and getting your first snap, and being in the, a championship game, that his turnover was so ugly, and you just can't have that happen. You need to just either accept the loss. So essentially he took the snap, he got chased back, he hesitated. I don't know if he was hesitating throwing it out of bounds or maybe trying to throw it, just potentially getting an intentional grounding, or if he saw a receiver, but he kind of pump faked. He had the defender in his face already, and then he tried to back up even more to get out of it. And then rather than just taking the sack, as he was getting tackled, very ugly, just push of the ball forward to really nobody. And it was ruled a fumble. Patriots picked it up, ran it in for a touchdown, but they had to review it, so they actually didn't give the Patriots a touchdown, which was a weird call in itself. That the guy recovered the ball untouched, ran it in the end zone, and because they had to look back at it, they ended up giving the Patriots the ball where he picked it up. I mean, it wasn't a huge difference. Well, from a touchdown, it was a big difference, but they were already on the Broncos, maybe I think 5 or 6 yard line. They were, down and goal to go at that point. So I thought it was a bit of a weird call, but that turnover was definitely the difference in the game, and it was ugly. You just can't have that happen. So Patriots advance. I do not think that they have shown the capability to beat this Seahawks team. This Seahawks team, boy, were we treated with another absolute gem. This Rams Seahawks, both times that anytime they played this year, it has just been an absolute stunner of a game. It's been a lot of fun to watch. Stafford finished 22 of 35 for 374 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, was sacked 1 time for a rating of 127.6. And they still lost 31-27 to Sam Darnold, who posted 25 for 36, 346 yards, 3 touchdowns, no sacks, was sacked 3 times for a rating of 127.8. That's right. Stafford's rating was 127.6. Darnold's 127.8. They played identical games. Stafford threw for 30 more yards than Darnold did, but they both looked phenomenal. Those were 2 top-tier quarterbacks going back and forth, and boy, was it a fun game to watch. My big issue, or the big takeaway I have, and I don't necessarily hate the call, because I know everybody, there are going to be a lot of people who are talking about the call, and it's, of course, throughout the season, we're seeing it more and more on these 4th downs where analytics say go for it, and then, of course, it's the situation where if you go for it and you convert, you're seen, like you have these big cones and you're going for the win, and you're taking them out at the deep end to, force them to swim. And then if you don't convert on the 4th down, it just looks like it was a terrible play call. What are you thinking? You need to take the points. Being said, I think there is starting to be kind of an undervalue in taking the points. And it happened again to the Rams. I think McVay is an awesome coach. He's a great coach. I'm not saying the contrary. But his play calling did, even against the Bears, come a bit into question in the overtime game. Rams got the ball, and you have Matthew Stafford at the helm. This is like no bum throwing the ball for you. And he goes run, run, run on the first possession of overtime. And then he punts it back to the Bears. And now Caleb Williams, aside from throwing the interception, could have had the opportunity to basically put up points on the board to win the game. That was a bit dumbfounding to me. I didn't understand the play calling. I don't know why you at least try to throw the ball at least one time when you have Matthew Stafford, Puka. And then in this game, against the Seahawks. At one point, they're down 4. They have an opportunity to kick a field goal. I get it. They were on the 5 or 6 yard line. They were deep into Seattle territory. They were knocking on the door. They were threatening, and it's 4th and goal. And either you can kick a field goal, give the ball back to the Seahawks, down a point, or you can go for it on 4th down. You obviously going for the touchdown. You score the touchdown. You go up 3, assuming that he takes the field goal, and then the field goal is made. It's not McManus and the Packers. They make their field goals. They make their points after touchdowns. So do they, in that situation, you give the ball back to the Seahawks, down only 1. And I think that would have been, given how the game was going, the right decision to make. And I get it. Hindsight is always 20/20. But regardless of how the game was going, given how the game was going, you're down 1. You give the ball back to the Seahawks, even if you give up another touchdown with how well Darnold was playing and how monster of a game JSN was having. Assuming they also go for the field goal after they score a touchdown, that still puts you down only one possession. You're down 8 points. Instead of giving them the ball back deep in their own territory, relying on your defense, which up until that point hasn't really given you a reason to believe, hey, we can stop this. They're not going to move the ball because, well, frankly, they have been moving the ball the whole game. And if they go down, and even if they get a field goal, you need a touchdown to tie. But if they score, then it automatically, obviously, is a 2-possession game. So I was a little dumbfounded. I shouldn't say dumbfounded. It's not that intense. But I think in that situation, I would have gone for the 3 points, keeping it a 1-possession game, even had the Seahawks scored after that. Or unless, then you need to tip your hat with to the Seahawks, because if they get the ball back, they score, they're up 7, and instead of remaining up 7, they go for 2, and then they're up 9, which is a 2-possession game. Then you can say that at that point, I don't know, then you need to have that's at one point you need to ask your defense to be able to step up and make a play and keep it 1 possession. Anyway, 2 phenomenal games. Both games were a lot of fun, and even though that the Patriots-Broncos game finished 10-7, it was a lot of fun to watch. And the Rams-Seahawks finishing 31-27 for the Seahawks was also awesome game. So now 2 weeks from now, we'll have on the 8th of February, we'll have the Seahawks and the Patriots facing off in the Super Bowl. And I can go over that a little bit more later, but I think initially my thoughts are in favor of the Seahawks. Anyway, moving on, let's get into a little bit of Packers here. Big news being the hire of Jonathan Gannon for the new defensive coordinator. There have been a lot of mixed reviews, and the fans I feel there have been fans that are either happy about it or extremely angry about it. Maybe not extremely angry, but disgruntled, just very annoyed with the hire. A lot of the reason was because there was a lot of talks about Jim Leonard being out and available especially now after the Broncos lost. But let's get into this real quick, because Jim Leonard is the defensive pass game coordinator and assistant head coach for the Broncos right now. So basically the idea was that, and there have been mixed reports, but I think generally speaking, if your team is still competing in the playoffs, coaches are unable to interview or be asked to interview for positions for the following season, obviously. But there was one sort of caveat to this, was that it's free game after week 18, apparently, before the first week of the playoffs. So there are some questions that have come about that, knowing or being almost sure that Jeff Hafley wasn't going to be back as the DC for the Packers, why wasn't someone in the front office ahead of the curve and already tried to not only maybe secure an interview, but kind of maybe reach out to Jim Leonard, and see if, kind of test the waters, check the temperature, see if he would be on board with, the idea of becoming DC in Green Bay. Being said, obviously a lot of this is kept under wraps and behind closed doors, so I don't know if it ever officially happened or didn't happen, but there were no reports on it ever actually happening. So I'm just going to assume that I guess it didn't happen. So failing to reach out there, and that was obviously because Jeff Hafley was still the DC, but going into the first round of the playoffs against the Bears in Soldier Field, there was a window where we could have been ahead of the curve and tried to really, gauge the temperature of the waters. So what happens next is the Packers obviously drop that hideous, it's going to go down in history, one of the worst losses again. Big surprise. We get knocked out first round of the playoffs. The Broncos are still in. So Jim Leonard at that point can't take any more interviews. And now there was, I guess, speak of, okay, MLF, Matt LaFleur, believes that, maybe a decision needs to be made because, people were saying the longer you wait, the less quality coaches will be available. So we almost need to make, a move now. And then if you don't make a move now, the longer we're waiting, the more likely it is going to be Jim Leonard because we're just waiting for him to be available. But then, I don't know, I guess in that specific scenario, there was also a possibility of us, quote unquote, sitting on some of the better candidates because we were waiting for Jim Leonard. And then what if we didn't end up getting Jim Leonard? Then I guess the selection of candidates after that would have been kind of, no offense to any of the guys there, but quote unquote bottom of the barrel guys. Being said, I guess I hope, and I know Jason Wilde does a good job reporting, and I love to listen to him, and he does a phenomenal job. I'm waiting for him to ask his question to MLF about this situation, about was waiting for Jim Leonard on the table, and if it was on the table, then how come was Jonathan Gannon at that point, did he just completely impress MLF to a point where is saying we need to bring this guy on now before we potentially lose him? So where I'm at, positive and negative, my biggest negative for Gannon is there are videos out there circulating on the net where when he was with the Cardinals, he was on the sideline after Amari DeMarcado, one of their running backs, fumbled. There's a video of him on the sideline getting up into him and obviously just screaming into his ear, and then giving him a almost like a double shove, one little hit in the gut. It's kind of from the back end, so I wouldn't say it was like a punch in the gut, but it was just kind of a hit, and then he hit him again, and then before walking away, but he was obviously just fuming. And I don't like that. I get it. He's fuming. I like that part. And holding players responsible, I think that does need to come to Green Bay, and we do need more edge. But hitting the player the way he did, I really don't like that. Now moving on to the positive, that's probably my biggest negative. Because, and I'll address there are a lot of people saying, well, being the coach of the Cardinals and the record he has posted over the last 3 years being the head coach at the Cardinals, all have been losing seasons. I think, honestly, beside, once again, another fateful loss for the Packers against Arizona when Rodgers threw the Hail Mary to bring it into overtime, Cardinals get the first possession, and then lo and behold, Larry Fitzgerald has a catch and run for I don't know, felt like forever. And at that point, the rules in overtime were still first team to score wins. So that basically just capped it off for us. But since that time, I believe that was 2015, it was 2015 season, so the game happened in early 2016. Since then, the Cardinals have been, non-existent. There have been a middling team at best. So was it a good coach put in a bad situation? Was Gannon potentially not ready for the head coaching position? Also a possibility. But there is also a lot to say for a head coach who has head coaching experience stepping back into a coordinator position. So this will be just like Jeff Hafley, who was the coach of BC on the collegiate level, which also didn't pan out incredibly well. He took a step back down into the NFL as a defensive coordinator. This will be Jonathan Gannon stepping down from an NFL head coaching position back into a defensive coordinator position where, and this is where the positive is, I suppose, he has previously coordinated championship Super Bowl level defenses. So I think he is capable of doing it. And yes, the elephant in the room is if you watch any interviews with the guy or if you watch some pressers with him, he is a quirky guy. He is definitely quirky, kind of a weird, awkward presence. I get it, but I'm willing to give him an opportunity. I'm willing to give him a chance, and I think I just want to see how it pans out. I'm not happy about it. I wouldn't say I'm over the moon about it. I think a lot of people would have been over the moon about Jim Leonhard, a lot in part because of the ties that he has with Wisconsin. He played with Wisconsin. He was also a coach, assistant coach, and he was also a coordinator at Wisconsin. This is like a born and bred Wisconsin guy. Jim Leonhard is. Jonathan Gannon, I think I am open and willing to see what he can bring to the table, considering that on his resume, he has been once again in charge of Super Bowl caliber defenses. And we have a lot of excellent puzzle pieces as it stands January 26, 2026 on our defense right now. We have a safety tandem between Evan Williams and Xavier McKinney that is arguably top of the league. We have Edrin Cooper. We have Micah Parsons. We're going to have Devontae Wyatt coming back. We do have some glaring holes, also needs to be admitted, specifically at the cornerback position and a little bit more in our defensive backfield. And then also seeing if we can, keep the rushing game capped and if we can keep being a pretty decent, front, especially against the run. There's work to be done, and I think, we'll see. I'm excited to see what Gannon can do. I will say already, though, I will not be happy if we see, for example, Micah Parsons, phenomenal talent. I want to see him rushing the freaking quarterback. That's what he does best. He is the best in the league rushing the quarterback. He's a phenomenal athlete. I want to see him just pinning his ears back, as they say, and going after the quarterback. When he needs a breather, you bring him off for a breather, but on those third and distances, you just send him in. I don't want to see a freaking Joe Barry defense where we're going to see some Micah Parsons lined up on the edge and then drop back into a spy on a wide receiver bubble screen, or covering the short out of the running back to the flat. Like, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see Parsons dropping back into coverage. He needs to be rushing the quarterback. And I forget who it was. But at one point there was, with Joe Barry, I don't think it was, who was it? We had a defensive end, big boy, dropping back into coverage on Devontae Adams when he was with the Raiders, and Devontae obviously caught a touchdown, and then you look at the replay and it was like, well, that's because we had this 300-pound dude that dropped back into coverage on the Devontae. That was the Joe Barry defense for you. Anyway, I don't want to see Michael Parsons drop back into coverage. I don't want to see him drop back into zone. I want to see him rushing the quarterback. That's one of the main things I'm going to be looking at. And I'm open and I'm willing to give Gannon a couple games grace, see what he does. I'm already excited for the next season. But that's also to say there are some other changes that I still want to see made in the coaching staff. I'm sure they'll let Gannon bring in a couple of his team and his guys. But of course, this is definitely not a knock against these guys. Great humans, great human beings. They have families, and I get it's tough, but we need to replace Steno. And it's the more reporting I'm seeing about it, the more I'm trying to swallow the pill of us probably having Rich Bisaccia back as our special teams coordinator 2026 season, because how much everybody apparently loves him in the building, how high of regard everybody has for him in the building, not only from the players' perspective, but also other front office personnel's perspective. Everybody speaks so highly of him. So how can you get rid of him? Because our special team sucks. That's how you can get rid of him. And look at the Rams. Honestly, back to the game last night, which was another game-changing moment. Seahawks punting the ball, Rams getting the ball back, fielding the punt. I forget the guy's name, but he essentially trips. He's misjudging the ball. He trips backward, and as he's falling backward, the ball comes down, hits him on his left shoulder as he's trying to catch it, fumbles it. You got 2-3 Seahawk guys right there to recover the ball. That is 110% something I expect to happen to the Packers under Rich Bisaccia. That is expected. You have a big punt. There's a little bit of pressure. I know it. All the Packer fans out there, I know it. We hold our freaking breath. The punt is in the air. You got Tony Romo, this is a high punt, Jim. This is a great punt. A little windy up there. Oh my God, that's a freaking nightmare. It's a nightmare for any Packers fan to have this. I start having heart palpitations. I'm holding my breath, and I'm seeing God knows who, not Nixon anymore. One time it's Josh Jacobs. Next time it's going to be Dobbs. Next time I don't know. It's always someone new back there, and I'm just waiting. I'm like, oh boy, just don't fumble it. Just don't fumble it in our own end zone for them to pick it up, for them to score. Just keep possession, fumble it, but maybe jump back onto it. I hope someone's tracking back. Anyway, Steno, Rich Bisaccia, we still need changes to be made in the coaching staff, and I guess a positive to that is that MLF did hint on that, saying changes are still going to be made. So we'll keep an eye out and we'll see. And then another thing I want to get into real quick is Giannis and the Bucks. Giannis against, where to start? This was all right. The Bucks lose to the Spurs, of course. Then we had 3 games of full rest. We had the January 16, 17, 18 full rest before we played in Atlanta against the Hawks. It was a good game. It was a fun game. Almost blew a big lead, but pulled out the victory in the end. And there was hustle. It was high intensity, and I liked what I was seeing. I said, this is what I want to see, and it was against the Hawks, who are in contention with us, more or less at the same place at the table, who are fighting for that playoff spot. And it was a good victory. And it honestly, there was something to feel good about. January 20th, we have rest. We play the Thunder on the 21st. We get blown out. This was like the game started. Thunder go up to a 20-point lead. Cruise control. At one point, we brought it down to, I don't even know, 14, 13-point lead. And it would seem like OKC, we just poke the bear, bringing it almost down into single digits. And they were like, oh, okay, we got to play again. And then they shoot right back out to a 20-plus point lead. It's super frustrating. But it's OKC. So that's the excuse you give yourself. We have another full day's rest, January 22nd. Then we play against the Nuggets. Now, the Nuggets had their top 7-8 guys out. And you think, and we play it in Milwaukee again. So rest was definitely not an issue. And with basically the only starter they had playing was Aaron Gordon, who ended up only playing 16 minutes in the game. And we lose by 2. We were down 20-plus points again to this squad. It was so frustrating. There was where was the effort? It's like there should be blood in the water at this point. We should be fighting. These young guys should be fighting. And I just don't see it. I don't see it. It's super frustrating. Giannis is frustrated in his pressers afterwards. And then on top of that, Giannis goes in the tunnel. Everybody obviously is holding their breath again, crossing our fingers, and then we see him coming back out. Great news. And then he plays, and then he goes down again, and is just no good. So right now it's another calf sprain. He always has had these calf issues. The MRI came back clean, but it's a calf sprain, so there's no official timetable yet. But there's some talk out there that it's going to be about 3 to 4 weeks. Which, boy, does that change the landscape, because 3 to 4 weeks. Well, I mean, we couldn't even win with him, and now we're going to be expected to win without him, because our minutes on the court without Giannis has been a big emphasis of just trying to keep the team afloat while Giannis is sitting on the bench. And now we're going to have to be playing full games without Giannis. At this point, I'm almost wondering, this season is disaster. I'm stuttering about it, because I want to put up the white flag, but I don't want to put up the white flag. But we've been being toyed with so many times where you're like, this is it. We need to do it. This is it. If we want to see a change, this is the time we need to see a change. The Bucks, we can still do it. We're still fighting for this play. It's like, how many times do we need to see it before we accept what this Bucks team is this year? And this is a lottery team. This is the reality of it. This is a lottery team. And now I see we play team. Yesterday we were supposed to play the Mavericks. Mavericks never left Dallas because their flight was having ice issues. They were trying to de-ice the plane, couldn't get it de-iced in time. By the time they flew, I think the game was going to be way too late, so they just postponed the match. But before they even postponed the match, they were already ruling out. Cooper Flagg was already being ruled out. Max Christie was already being ruled out. At this point, I think I know this sounds crazy, but at this point, teams that are seeing the Bucks on their schedule, they're probably telling themselves, hey, this is a great opportunity for us to give our bench some extra minutes, and give even some of our deeper bench guys, some of our deep rotation, some quality minutes to see what we have, what we're working with. And on top of that, to give some of our stars and our starting 5 a rest, because this freaking NBA season is still 82 goddamn games long. Pardon my language. Tomorrow we play the Sixers in Philly. This is now, this is going to be after, let's see, January 24th, 25th, because we didn't play, 26th. This is going to be off 3 full days of rest. And the Sixers, as I speak, played today. They just lost to the Hornets, 130-93. They just got blown out by the Hornets. Granted, Joel Embiid did not play. Paul George did not play. But Maxey was there. Edgecombe was there. Oubre, Barlow, Drummond. That was the starting 5 for the Sixers. And now that I even see this, it probably even worries me more, because They're probably pissed about getting smacked by the Hornets. So now they're going to be playing against the Bucks. Embiid is probably going to want to play. George is going to probably play, even though it kind of contradicts what I was just saying. But these guys are going to want to get a get it right game. They're 24-20 now. Outlook not so great. This is going to be, what's the over-under on the game clock before the Bucks fall down 20 points? That is what is running through my head right now. What is the over-under on game clock before the Bucks find themselves in a 20-point deficit? That's where we're at. That's where we're at with the Bucks. And then last but not least, Peralta. We'll just touch on Peralta quickly. Fastball Freddy. I think he has grown to be so much more than Fastball Freddy for the Brewers. He not only has that four-seam fastball, he also has great bag selection. He can throw a solid changeup. He's got a great curveball. He's got an excellent slider. He's turned into an excellent pitcher. And I don't think it was about the Brewers not wanting to pay him $8 million. That is false. Of course, the Brewers would pay $8 million for Peralta. I think realistically what happened was Peralta, after next season, was going to enter free agency, which at that point, the Brewers, because, good for Peralta. He has worked for it. He's great pitcher. And he deserves it, and he's going to get his bag. Now, what is that bag going to be? Not entirely sure, but it is definitely going to be in at least the mid-20s, potentially even low $30 million range per annum. So the Brewers, I think, really had the option to either we can get a haul back for him now, or he, after the 2026 season, goes into free agency where we basically, we lose him for another, a first-round pick. Because the Brewers, honestly, realistically, were not going to, start paying Freddy Peralta $30 million, because that's not what the Brewers are about. So, honestly, I think, and the haul we got back for it is two very promising guys. Oh, we also sent out Tobias Myers, with Peralta to the Mets, who I know a lot of people saying Dodgers, ruin baseball, and it's true. There is, the Dodgers salary cap, if you want to call it that. They spend, they're spending $400 million a year, and the Mets are really no different. They're right behind them, I think, in the $360, $365 million range. So these are big-time markets that, frankly, teams like the Brewers just can't compete with, which is where a lot of people have beef in the MLB right now. So that forces the Brewers to really do a kind of homegrown talent attack and really try to squeeze out the most worth from the best guys that they can find. So in the haul that we got back from Peralta was we have two guys, both very highly touted prospects. We have Jet Williams, who is on MLB's number 30 overall prospect, and Brandon Sproat. Brandon Sproat is a pitcher, and they were both figured to play or to have integral roles for the Mets in the 2026 season. So it's not like we definitely didn't get who's this guy, nobody, or a bunch of cash in return. We got two highly touted prospects with, people will tell you, more baseball fans and baseball analysts will tell you these are two very solid prospects with a bright future. Jet Williams is a versatile former first-round draft pick capable of playing shortstop, second base, and center field. Sproat debuted last season on the mound, posting a 4.79 ERA in 4 starts. Both have promising futures. So I'm not mad about getting rid of Fastball Freddy. Good for him. I think it was a win-win. That's just the game of baseball. And the MLB, you make it up to the big leagues. It's not, I don't feel the big leagues is the big leagues. It's not just the MLB. If you make it up to the big leagues, sure, you can be making up to the big leagues playing for the Brewers, the Athletics, the Rapids, the Rays, these type of teams. But then you have the big leagues where you're playing for the Giants, the Mets, the Yankees, the Dodgers. That's when you're getting, you're getting paid bank. You're in the big leagues. Otherwise, you're just competing with the big leagues, I suppose. Trying to prove yourself. I almost feel if you are a player playing for a team like the Brewers, you are playing your arse off because you are trying to prove to the big league teams that you deserve a contract to be playing for them. And then you secure that contract. Hey, then you're chilling, making, 30, 40, 50, 60, $100+ million a year in the big market, playing for the big guys in the big league. Anyway, I think the haul for Peralta, it was a win-win. Good for Peralta. I'm happy he got paid. Incredibly hardworking guy. But I also just need to add, anytime we saw him pitching, it was, how many times did he actually make it into, deep into the game, into the 7th inning, into the 8th inning? Anytime Peralta came to the mound, we always saw at one point we had pitchers warming up in the bullpen. So I think that it's also worth having an ace. Not saying that Peralta isn't an ace, but it's also worth having an ace that you go out there and you know that he can give you 7, 8 innings, and then you can throw in a rebate for just an inning or two, but you don't have to worry about, bringing in a guy who's going to have to potentially pitch you another 4 or 5 innings, or bring in that guy who's going to pitch you, at least he needs to at least give you 3 innings before you throw in your closer for the last inning. So that's where I thought Peralta had his biggest struggle, but otherwise, happy for him. He got paid. Good for him. And I've been following baseball a lot more because, honestly, since the introduction of the pitch clock, man, whoever came up with that idea, that person needs a raise. Give that man a raise, or woman. Watching baseball has become so much monumentally more digestible. I don't feel like I can take a nap between pitches anymore. And baseball, granted, the Brewers helped with that a lot last year as well, because they weren't this team that was sending out guys a la Judge and a la Dumper, who was just, you send them a wrong pitch and they're cranking it 500 feet. They're hitting them out of the stadium. Brewers were get on base. Single, doubles, hit it in the field, place it, just get on base. Stealing a bunch of bases, it was exciting. Honestly, the Brewers played exciting baseball, and I'm not just saying that as a Brewers fan. I'm just, as someone who really started watching the league closer since the introduction of the pitch clock. All right, thanks for tuning in, guys. You can catch me on my Substack, PMewi Sports, PMEWI Sports. I do some analysis, mostly on NFL stuff. Right now I'm looking at kind of the defenses in the NFL who have allowed, quote unquote, the most career days. Just went through QBs. The next up we'll be going through running backs, wide receivers. Spoiler alert, the Packers are at the top of the list. Oh boy. All right, thanks for listening, guys. Catch you in the next one.